let us discuss this whole Russiagate thing. All right, so how do I even begin? It started back in 2016, in the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton going up against Donald Trump. And it came out that there was some sort of a connection between Donald Trump and the Russians, that the Russians were helping Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton. Oh, my, how is this possible? What is going on in this country that we could let foreign interference in our election system? Well, it turns out that whole thing was debunked. And now let's start first, before we get into what just happened with the indictment of the lawyer this week. I want to talk about the Steele Dossier, because this pertains perfectly with it. Here's a New York Post article. How anti-Trump Steele Dossier exposed shoddy world of private spies. Let's see. In 2013, it was claimed Donald Trump frolicked among peeing prostitutes and in the presidential suite of Moscow's Ritz-Carlton, and Russia's intelligence service had a video of the incident, it was claimed. Back in 2013, it started in 2013. The bombshell was made public in January 2017 when BuzzFeed published a collection of memos written by former British spy Christopher Steele, purportedly detailing Donald Trump's activities in Russia. The allegations were based solely on hearsay, and yet they rocketed around the world. Bamboozling, if you will. The so-called Steele Dossier is the most high-profile product from a secretive, little-known, and little-regulated industry known as private espionage. In the last decade, the industry has exploded, bringing in revenue of $2.5 billion in 2018, according to an estimate from ERG Partners, an investment bank focusing on the intelligence industry. The private intelligence is an industry that has existed largely in the shadows, despite the immense influence it can sometimes wield. There's a quote, "There is a booming business out there that's invading our privacy, profiting from deception and manipulating the news, and it's one we have to be on guard against," says Barry Meyer, who shines a light on a recent newsmakers in private espionage with his book Spooked, The Trump Dossier, Black Cube, and the Rise of Private Spies. Private intelligence began really ticking off in the years after 9/11 attacks, when career government spies began bucking the long-time tradition of not moving into the private sector. Private investigators once were content to lurk in the shadows, Meyer writes. Now, politicians were hiring them to dig up dirt on opponents. Companies were employing them to torpedo investigations into their activities by authorities or journalists, and dictators were using them as freelance intelligence agents. And few incidents illustrate the power as well as the potential problems with this shadow world, as well as the Steele Dossier. Christopher Steele, a 50-something former MI6 agent who had been stationed in Moscow back in the 1990s, fits the profile of those who frequently work in the private spying business, Meyer says. They're often a retired government spy or over-the-hill agent who is basically shopping their past and living off the skills that they developed while they were working for the government, he says. After retiring from MI6, Steele launched a London investigation firm called Orbis Business Intelligence. For his work on the Steele Dossier, the former spy was contracted by Fusion GPS, a DC-based intelligence company run by two former Wall Street Journal reporters, Glenn Simpson and Peter Fritz, who had decided to turn their journalistic investigative skills to other ends. Simpson and Frisk's mission to uncover dirt on Trump started in 2015 when a billionaire Republican supporter of Marco Rubio named Paul Singer hired Fusion GPS to collect opposition research on the candidate from New York. By April 2016, it had become clear that Trump was going to be the Republican nominee. Singer stopped funding the operation. Simpson and French, however, wanted to continue following leads on Trump, particularly about his activities in Russia. Through a lawyer named Mark Elias, Fusion GPS found a new patron in Hillary Clinton, who, according to ABC News, paid $1 million. During Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State in the Obama administration, she had taken a hostile stance toward Vladimir Putin, the author writes. Now, any information linking Trump to Moscow could provide her with ammunition. So just to, so Hillary knew she wanted ammunition against Trump. She knew that this was going to be something that she could use against him, whether it was true or not, which of course it turned out to be false. Simpson considered himself a Russian expert, and now that Clinton was paying the bills, he went in search of someone closer to the action. He hired Steele in May of 2016. One of the advantages private spies have is that they are often not bound by the same rules and ethics of government officials or journalists. Operatives from outfits like Black Cube, an Israeli company that was hired by Harvey Weinstein to dig up dirt on his accusers, have been known to impersonate documentary filmmakers or befriend subjects under false pretenses in order to get close to sources. If a person defrauds you out of money, they can be prosecuted because that's a crime, he says. But if someone is making money by defrauding you out of information, that's totally legal. Rather than subterfuge to gain intelligence, Steele simply paid a Russian collector named Igor Danchenkova, who gathered intel on his behalf. In 2010, Danchenkova's employer, a company that prepared risk assessments for firms looking to do business in Russia, went out of business. Danchenko was soon introduced by Steele by a mutual acquaintance. In 2012, Steele paid him to take his first trip to Russia as an operative to gather information about a businessman's possible ties to Russian organized crime, Meyer writes. Steele was boasting that he had this weird Russian collector that had deep connections to people in the Kremlin, Meyer says, but it turned out that his collector was this kind of schlumpy ex-Russian lawyer who had drifted into the world of private spying. In turn, Danchenko got his information from a network of childhood friends and drinking buddies who would tell him, "I just overheard such and such about an issue." The P-tape allegation came from one of Danchenko's sources who reported there was a well-known rumor that Trump was into water sports and indulged at the fancy Moscow hotel, Meyer writes. Danchenko followed up by speaking to hotel employees, one of whom told him all kinds of things happened there, which Danchenko took as corroboration. Steele never verified the information or saw the video. He included the rumor in his memo because he felt it wasn't his job to cherry-pick information, but rather to pass along all unvetted so-called raw intelligence. This was the fuel that the entire industry runs on. It's smoke, Meyer says. And I agree. The murky nature of the Steele dossier didn't stop the former spy and Fusion GPS from working relentlessly to pass along the intelligence to journalists and government officials, a key job of private spies. The spies and those who hire them want to make the public aware of information they gather, Meyer says. It doesn't do them any good for this stuff to be gathered and then sit in the back of some lawyer's room. Steele had for months tried to pass along the information he had collected to an FBI source. But when the G-Man wasn't interested, he and Fusion GPS stepped up their media offensive. In the fall of 2016, Steele hosted an off-the-record press junket at a fancy DC-based hotel in the Tavern Inn, in which reporters from outlets included Yahoo News, The New Yorker, The New York Times, and CNN were cycled through to hear his presentation on the dossier. Spooked, reports according to Meyer. Inside a meeting room, over a spread of food, Simpson introduced Steele, who presented his case, though he did note that his information still needed to be confirmed. Even if a journalist believed Steele, there was no apparent way to independently confirm what he had said, Myers writes. As a result, just one article appeared on the heels of the Tavern Inn meetings, a piece of Michael Isikoff from Yahoo News about U.S. intel officials probing Trump advisor Carter Page. Then, in December 2016, BuzzFeed reporter Ken Benzinger attended a Fusion GPS retreat in San Francisco. At the party, Simpson told Benzinger about the dossier and alleged P-tape. Benzinger was interested and eventually was able to photograph the dossier's pages in the office of an aide to John McCain. In January 2017, CNN aired a vague report that the FBI Director James Comey had briefed Trump about the potential Russian compromat. BuzzFeed editor Ben Smith, fearful that he was going to get scooped, made the snap decision to publish the dossier online. From there, the unverified allegations in the Steele dossier burst into the mainstream, and Meyer says the whole saga exposed an unsavory alliance. It raises serious concern about how journalists and private intelligence firms interact with each other, Meyer says. It spoke to this very hyper-partisan and fragmented media world that we're living in right now, or living in now, that allows disinformation to flourish on both sides of the spectrum. Despite some of the Steele dossiers have been debunked, most notably the accusation that Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, traveled to Prague to meet with Russian spies, Meyer says the private intelligence industry has not been cowed. After being forced into hiding in 2017, when his name was revealed, Christopher Steele is now back to work with Orbis and other companies he runs. He's still working. He's still working. These people are still working behind the scenes, still pushing fake news. All right, so this was the Steele dossier. This is one of the base of all of this with the Russian Trump collusion stuff. And when you get to the nitty-gritty of it all, it's basically based on some drunk friends of some washed-up lawyer from Russia who's trying to remain relevant. So enter this week. Okay, now we have one of Hillary Clinton's lawyers being indicted for the whole Russiagate thing. So this is from Glenn Greenwald on his Substack. The indictment of Hillary Clinton's lawyer is an indictment of the Russiagate wing of the U.S. media. Before I read this, I just got to say, I'm so sick of hearing about the Russiagate stuff because, as you know, I voted for Trump. I proudly did. I would do it again. I openly talk about it. I'm not afraid of what people think of me. I don't care. Because I liked him as a president. I thought he was quite good when I started paying attention. And when I started paying attention, I liked him even more. Okay, but as soon as that happened, as soon as I announced I'm going to vote for Trump this year because he's the only option. We need Trump. I said that, and I stand by that statement. So many people were coming up to me, calling me a racist, calling me... specifically people from my past, people that I went to high school with, people I don't even consider them friends because they never really were. They weren't my friends in high school. I just happened to be friends with them on Facebook, and I made a statement, and of course they all came out of the woodwork to reprimand me and tell me and bring up the whole Russia thing and bring up the whole Charlottesville thing and how the Muslim ban and all these things that they've been bamboozled by because none of it was actually true. But this is one of the biggest things. I wasn't even political, okay? From 2016, most of my life. No, never in my life have I been political. Only 2020. 2020 made me become political. Now I will never let it go because I will always be part of that conversation. But one thing stood at the very forefront of all of this BS was the Russiagate thing and how the Russians helped steal the 2016 election from Hillary Clinton, who still claims that it was stolen from her. She's allowed to talk about that, but oh my gosh, heaven help anyone who says that Trump had the election stolen from him, which we'll get to that in a little bit because I'm going to be talking about the Maricopa County audit next. All right, but let's read this. Okay, this is crazy. The DOJ's new charging document approved by Biden's Attorney General sheds bright light onto the Russiagate fraud and how journalistic corruption was key. A lawyer for Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign was indicted on Wednesday with one felony count of lying to the FBI about a fraudulent Russiagate story he helped propagate. Michael Sussman was charged by the crime by Special Counsel John Durham, who was appointed by Trump Attorney General William Barr to investigate possible crimes committed as part of the Russiagate investigation, whose work is now overseen and approved by Biden Attorney General Merrick Garland. Sussman's indictment, approved by Garland, is the second allegation of criminal impropriety regarding Russiagate's origins. In January, Durham secured a guilty plea from an FBI agent, Kevin Kleinsman, for lying to the FISA court and submitting an altered email in order to spy on former Trump campaign officer Carter Page. The law firm where Sussman is a partner, Perkins Coie, is a major player in Democratic party politics. One of its partners at the time of the alleged crime, Mark Elias, has become a liberal social media star after having served as general counsel to Clinton's 2016 campaign. Elias abruptly announced that he was leaving the firm 3 weeks ago, and thus no charges have been filed against him. The lie that Sussman allegedly told the FBI occurred in the context of his mid-2016 attempt to spread a completely fictitious story that there was a secret server discovered by unnamed internet experts that allowed the Trump organization to communicate with Russia-based Alpha Bank. In the context of the 2016 election, in which the Clinton campaign had elevated Trump's alleged ties to the Kremlin to center stage, this secret communication channel was peddled by Sussman, both to the FBI and to Clinton-friendly journalists, as a smoking gun, proof of nefarious activities between Trump and the Russians. Less than 2 months prior to the 2016 elections, Sussman secured a meeting at the FBI's headquarters with the Bureau's top lawyer, James Baker, and provided him data which he claims prove this communication channel. It was in this course of trying to lure the FBI into investigating this scam conspiracy theory when Sussman allegedly lied to Baker by concealing the fact, outright denying that he was peddling the story in his role as lawyer for the Hillary Clinton campaign as well as a lawyer for a tech executive, hoping to be appointed as the top cybersecurity official in the soon-to-be inaugurated Clinton administration. This man was hoping that this lie was going to get him appointed to some high up position. The top cybersecurity official for the new Clinton presidency. Wow. Sussman's claims that he was just acting as a concerned private citizen were negated by numerous documents obtained by Durham's investigation, including billing records where he charged the Clinton campaign for his work in trying to disseminate this story, including his meeting with Baker at the FBI headquarters. I'm just a concerned citizen. That's all. I just want to make sure the truth comes out. And also, here's my bill, and you're going to put me in that high up position, right? The FBI went on a wild goose chase to investigate Sussman's conspiracy theory, but the Bureau quickly concluded that there was no evidentiary basis to believe any of it, as the indictment explains. This is from the FBI. It says the FBI's investigation of these allegations nevertheless concluded that there was insufficient evidence to support the allegations of a secret communications channel with the Russian bank One. In particular, among other things, the FBI's investigation revealed that the email server at issue was not owned or operated by the Trump organization, but rather had been administered by a mass marketing email company that sends advertisements for Trump hotels and hundreds of other clients. It has long been known, after the Trump Alpha Bank story was a fraud, a report issued in December 2019 by the DOJ's Inspector General revealed that the FBI investigated whether there was cyber links between the Trump organization and Alpha Bank, but concluded by early February 2017 that there were no such links. Special Counsel Robert Mueller thought so little of this alleged plot that he did not even bother to mention it in his comprehensive final report. It wasn't even in the Mueller report, which admitted that the investigation did not establish that the members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. While the more anti-Trump Senate Intelligence Committee report acknowledged that, while unable to explain the data, the committee did not find that the DNS activity reflected the existence of covert communication between Alpha Bank and the Trump organization personnel. It's like they couldn't even admit it. They need to leave it open-ended so all the people that all the people that were bamboozled by all of these people could remain angry and can remain using this kind of stuff as ammunition to fight anyone who likes Trump, anyone who talked about him in a positive light in the slightest. They could keep bringing this up because, well, technically it wasn't really debunked. They didn't actually say it was, yes, it's been debunked. Okay? It was an absolute fabrication pushed by the Clinton campaign to help her beat Trump in the 2016 election. Well, it didn't work. Despite all of this fraud, one of so many that formed the Russiagate scandal played a significant role in shaping the media coverage of the 2016 election, spurred on by Hillary Clinton herself. The liberal sector of the corporate media used this fake claim to bolster their narrative that Trump and the Russians were secretly in cahoots. And the story of how they spread this disinformation involves not just the potential criminality outlined in this indictment of Hillary's lawyer, but even more seriously, a rotted and deeply corrupted media. Yes, and it's bigger than that. I just had a whistleblower, Zach Voorhees, on my show on Wednesday. He worked at Google. He explained machine learning to me. Look at this. This is his pinned tweet on his page about how they used this whole, all of this stuff to keep this stuff in the timelines. When anyone was Googling anything that had to do with the whole Russiagate thing, Google used this themselves to push this story. So it wasn't just the media, it was big tech. These people are all working together. They've pushed this story to try to vilify Donald Trump, to make him this big bad guy, that Joe Biden is really the person that they were claiming that Trump was the whole time, or whoever is making the decisions. I don't think Biden actually knows what day it is, but that's neither here nor there. What remains is the fact that there are so many people that will just not admit it. And I'm going to read this quote to you again from Carl Sagan. One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We are no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. Carl Sagan, you are a treasure. Thank you. These people have been bamboozled. These people are so lost. Their whole way of life, their everything relies on believing these lies. Because if they finally admit it, they have to acknowledge that they're wrong. They have to acknowledge that they've been bamboozled. They don't want to do it. They're very comfortable being angry at people like me, because I shove logic down their throats, or down their ears rather, whatever. I go, hey, logic, statistics. I leave emotion at the door. I'm a little annoyed today because of all of this stuff. It's ridiculous. And you know what? We all should be annoyed because the media lies to us. The big tech companies manipulate what we see when we're on the internet. It's ridiculous.